March of 2020, shortly after the COVID-19 pandemic began in the United States, the director of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention issued an order suspending the introduction into the United States of those who have been in coronavirus-impacted areas. The order specifically targeted those entering the country from Canada or Mexico who would be placed in a congregate setting, such as individuals who would normally be detained by Customs and Border Protection after arriving at the US-Mexico border. This includes those seeking asylum. The order has been used by the Department of Homeland Security to expel people back to Mexico and other countries, bypassing normal immigration procedures set out in Title 8 of the U.S. Code. The CDC's order was instead based on authorities provided in Title 42 of the U.S. Code, leading the policy to be known simply as Title 42. Title 42 is first and foremost a public health measure, not a tool for enforcing immigration law. However, leading public health experts have repeatedly argued against the use of Title 42 and have concluded that it has, quote, no scientific basis as a public health measure, unquote. Conversely, proponents of Title 42 have argued that ending the policy would lead to an influx of migrants at the US-Mexico border, with few mentioning COVID-19. Importantly, the United States is bound by the principle of non-refoulement. As a signatory to the 1967 Protocol to the 1951 Refugee Convention, this widely accepted principle of international law, enshrined into U.S. law by the Refugee Act of 1980, prevents countries from returning a refugee or asylum seeker to any territory where his or her life or freedom would be threatened on account of a protected ground. Because Title 42 is being used to override normal immigration procedures under U.S. law, many individuals are being expelled without first getting screened to protect against violations of non-refoulement. Since Title 42 was first implemented nearly 2.5 years ago, it has resulted in over 2.1 million expulsions. This has included single adults, families, and unaccompanied children, though unaccompanied children are now exempt from the policy. Others have also been turned away at authorized ports of entry along the US-Mexico border. In April of 2022, the CDC announced that it would end Title 42 effective May 23rd. However, this decision has been challenged in court, leading the policy to remain in place for the time being. In separate litigation, it was deemed unlawful to expel migrant families under Title 42 without giving them an opportunity to seek protection from persecution. The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops has long expressed opposition to Title 42, which has been proven to disregard the God-given dignity of vulnerable persons and undermine our country's long-standing commitment to humanitarian protection.
Catholic Charities humanitarian service to immigrants and refugees is guided by Catholic social teachings and the Gospel of Matthew 25, which calls us to welcome the stranger and promote the common good. This is a ministry Catholic Charities has carried out since our founding more than a century ago. The 167 Catholic Charities agencies nationwide serve our immigrant brothers and sisters at the border and at interior sites by providing food, clothing, housing assistance, medical support, and referral services to other resources. In addition, Catholic Charities work alongside the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops and other partners to advocate for policies that allow vulnerable people to seek life-saving protections in the U.S. with dignity, while also maintaining the sovereignty of our borders. Our immigrant brothers and sisters who arrive at the southern border come from all over the world, including Europe, the Middle East, Africa, Asia, and the Americas, seeking refuge from violence and oppression and for a fresh start. Many arrive tired and hungry, injured, and deeply traumatized. When they arrive, Catholic Charities staff and volunteers welcome them with a warm meal, clean clothing, a place to rest, and provide legal and medical referral services before they continue on to their next destination. In the past year, Catholic Charities welcomed nearly 400,000 immigrants, refugees, and asylum seekers. We are incredibly honored to accompany our brothers and sisters in their journey to safety and for a better life. Hear from one of our agencies that welcome refugees and asylum seekers near the southern border.
Like other Catholic charities agencies working along the southern border, Catholic Community Services, Casa Alitas, receives people who are considered exceptions to Title 42. These are migrants who are considered most vulnerable. Migrants who are most vulnerable are people who have serious medical conditions, or they're a provider of care for an individual with a serious medical condition, a person who has suffered violence, and there's evidence of that violence when they are apprehended, and they are at immediate risk. We've received guests who have obvious signs of torture, up into including removal of hands and feet. At Casa Alitas, we have access to medical care through our partnership with a federally qualified community health center. Our shelter provides culturally sensitive services with access to communication in indigenous languages spoken in various regions in Latin America. Casa Alitas provides services that emphasize the dignity and respect for individuals and families and access to supportive services. People who are able to travel remain with us about 28 to 48 hours. Others may remain longer until they are medically well enough to move on. Almost all the guests of Casa Alitas have a final destination other than Arizona. All guests are provided with meals, an individual or family room for sleeping, clothing, food, and other items for travel, and assistance in making travel arrangements to join their family or sponsors in other parts of the country. The priority for all of our guests is to join their family and find safety and security. We send them with prayers to find a path to be able to make America their new home.
After 2 years of Title 42 implementation, it has resulted in thousands of migrants return to Mexico under inhumane and cruel conditions, undermining their rights, endangering their health, integrity, safety, and their lives, increasing their vulnerability. CRS partners at the northern border in Tijuana and Mexicali are witnessing too many stories of migrants, including an increasing number of women, children, youth, LGBT+ population that have suffered the consequences of this policy that was implemented without appropriate services, security, and protection conditions, transforming Title 42 into an express deportation procedure that doesn't consider particular asylum seeker needs. The 12 shelters that are working with CRS have been witnessing large number of people returning early morning hours when services are not available, an average of 300 expulsions per day that cannot be served by shelters as they have been at the limit of their capacity since 2018. Vulnerable individuals and family lost and disoriented as they are expelled at a different border, losing contact with their support networks or without their documentation, properties, and adequate clothing for weather conditions. Apprehended migrants in the U.S. don't receive any explanation. They are returned to Mexico, separated into groups by nationality, and then under the uncertainty of what might happen to them, they are abandoned to their fate. Mexican authority established federal shelters that are unsuitable, far from the city and from migration offices, forcing migrants to camp on the streets. Desperation creates the needs of migrants to try to cross again and again, each time being forced to get exposed to greater danger, worse weather, extortion, kidnapping, organized crime, violent robberies, and sexual violence, risking everything to survive and restart a dignified and safe life again.